So should I or should I not go back and play every single Final Fantasy game that has ever been released in the history of ever? I guess that's the question, isn't it? Up until now, the only Final Fantasy game that I've ever really completed from beginning to end is Final Fantasy X. Oh, okay, that's not true. Final Fantasy 15. That's crazy. Not even Final Fantasy X2 did I finish all the way through. I've played multiple Kingdom Hearts games. I've played some of the spin-offs like Dissidia, but I am sitting here genuinely mind blown that Final Fantasy has been a thing that I love. Crystal Chronicles was another one that I played a little bit when I was younger. I have always played bits and pieces of certain Final Fantasy games, but never have I ever actually gone through and beaten every single Final Fantasy game that's ever come out. And to be even more clear, the only two Final Fantasy games that I've really played all the way through is Final Fantasy X and Final Fantasy 15. Final Fantasy X is my absolute, I was gonna call it my favorite Final Fantasy game ever, but considering I've only played two, I don't even know if that's fair for me to say. But maybe it's because I have such a love for Kingdom Hearts as well, and you know, obviously you get to see some of the Final Fantasy characters in that game. I did play Dissidia. Everybody knows Cloud. Like, Cloud is my main in Smash. And you know, here I am sitting 20-something years old and I'm just like, how have I never played through every single Final Fantasy game ever? Now, I did have a little bit of a problem back in the day when like all I ever wanted to do was 100% games. And not even that, it got so bad to the point where like I would not buy certain games if they didn't have trophies or achievements or something of the sort. Like, that's why I didn't really play many Nintendo games throughout my teen years. But I have realized that that is such a big mistake. So here I am, it took me a little bit, but I have let go of that notion and I am now a truly new evolved man. Back in the day, if I felt like I was playing a game with no achievements or trophies, I felt like I was wasting my time. So I'm glad I let go of that because that has allowed me to play so many more games that before I was not even thinking about doing, and like, especially going back and playing old games. Now this whole thing about me playing old games, I think really started when I bought Pikmin 1 for the Wii. I had played it when I was younger and it was the first game that I had no achievements, no trophies, no nothing, but I just played all the way through because I had never beaten a Pikmin game, but I played 1 and 2 and I never really fully beat any of those. I was like, I'm gonna go back and beat them now that I'm older. But anyways, so Final Fantasy. The funny thing is too, when we talk about the Final Fantasy series, Final Fantasy X, when I was younger, I also played all the way up until the very end and I never beat it. And I only beat it once the remaster came out for the PS3. Got the platinum for it, by the way, and that, you know, that was the very first time I actually fully beat that game. So why do I want to go back and play all of the Final Fantasy games that have ever come out? With so many beautiful games that are coming out. Gorgeous, lush, you know, God of War, The Last of Us 2, Red Dead Redemption, Final Fantasy VII Remake. So having all these beautiful games that are supposed to be out there, new, better, enhanced, why am I contemplating going back to playing a bunch of 32-bit games? History, my people. And because I will appreciate the newer games so much more having played the older games. Not just that, adding a lot of context. So Final Fantasy is a super deep, immersive, complex world that has a lot of lore, and almost every game has a thing or two that you can connect to the previous one, even though it is not the same story. It's all within the same little universe. And maybe it is because I played Dissidia when I was younger and I remember really only playing through Titus's story and using him. And do not even get me started, it's Titus. Not Titus, not Titus. We're not gonna go with Titus. It's Titus. But yeah, just remember like using some of those other characters to be like, well, I don't really know who they are. So I'm just gonna play this game to play as my boy Titus, you know? Okay. And now that I am kind of like getting back and playing these older games, it's like, I just want to see so many of the things that are in Final Fantasy X. Some of the things that are in Kingdom Hearts. Everything that is in Dissidia. The world of Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy 14, the MMO. I feel like so many of these newer games can be appreciated so much more if I go back and play how it all started. I'm a massive fan of RPGs. Firaga. Chocobos, Moogles, all of these things are within this Final Fantasy world. And when I think about it, I've really only played one game. But I want to know more. I want to be that Final Fantasy nerd. I want to be able to say that I've played every single one of them. And actually for myself, be able to say like, okay, yes, I can judge how much I like these newer games and having that knowledge of the older games. Because if I'm a real fan and I've played all of them, some of the newer games I'm going to appreciate a lot more. And for some people who only play the newer games, they might not be able to appreciate some of the little things that they throw in there. So why am I doing this?
Why?
I don't mind going through and playing an older game. And hey, sometimes some people would say it's a fault because I have yet to play the newest God of War. I think it's God of War 2018. Just because when that game first came out and I heard all the hype around it, I was like, I need to go back and play every single God of War that has ever come out before this game, just so that when I play it, I can fully appreciate it. And I'm getting there. I've beaten about 4 God of Wars, but I've still yet to do it. And this has been over the course of my gosh, I mean, it's 2021 and this started in 2018. Bringing it back to Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy has such a deep, immersive world, and I would love to go back from the beginning, from the roots, see how it all started off and see it grow, see it develop, see them add little things here and there. Cause you know, you have these cool little things that are in all the games. Like obviously like a lot of the enemies are very similar, but I know it changes in the future. Some super classic characters like Biggs and Wedge, they're in I think almost every Final Fantasy game starting with 6 and up. Or Sid, you know the character Sid? In almost every single Final Fantasy, Sid is in one of those games. He's usually like an older guy, kind of an engineer, knows what to do with ships and such. Most of you probably know him from Final Fantasy 7. He's in Final Fantasy 10. Different variations of him. The Sid exists in all these Final Fantasies, and that's just one example. Now, I do talk about this a little bit in my unboxing video for this PSP, okay? So I have already begun this journey. The reason I got this specific PSP was because I want to play the best version of every single Final Fantasy game that there is. In terms of the PSP, there's this Final Fantasy 1 is supposed to be like the PSP version is the best way that you can play it. Final Fantasy 2, also the PSP is supposed to be one of the best ways you can play it. Now before anyone else jumps in and talks to me about getting an emulator and playing all the games on my computer, I've just never been a fan of emulators. I wanted to get a PSP. I didn't have a PSP, so you know, I'm a collector. There's just something about me being able to have the case, admire it, you know, and just kind of like have it as a part of my collection, you know? Along with these two, another game I picked up, Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core, another amazing game that I've never played and have only heard great things about. But again, talking about getting the context, like I would want to play 7 before playing this, although I'm pretty sure this is a prequel. But again, I just want to experience it the way that everyone else experienced it. Dissidia 2, or Dissidia 012 Duodecimum. When I was young, I played through 1. Now we're gonna play through 2 as well. Now this is kind of my game plan, and I'm pretty excited for it. I have this whole little collector reward system as I'm playing through these games. As I play through the game, after every game, I'm gonna do a little review for it. Yeah, boy. And after I complete the game and complete the review, I'm gonna do an unboxing on a little figurine with the main character from the game. I believe this guy's name's Firion. I've yet to play his game, so I'm sorry if I'm butchering the pronunciation. He's from Final Fantasy 2. Now, ideally, I would want to play all of them, starting with 1, finishing with 15. Oh, I'm also going to be playing all the side games. Final Fantasy Tactics, World of Final Fantasy, all those other ones. The way that I chose to go about this is play them. So the way that I went about choosing how I wanted to play this game was honestly just graphics. So I believe the two quote-unquote worst looking games are Final Fantasy 5 and Final Fantasy 6. These are games that haven't really been upgraded. These are games that like haven't really been visually upgraded. Let's take the first game for example. This game, there's the PSP version, which is supposedly the best version with all the quote-unquote DLC, new little things that they added. I could have played this probably on one of my PlayStations or the PSP as a PS1 classic, but I didn't really want to do that because I heard this is the best way to play the game. So with Final Fantasy 5 and Final Fantasy 6, they don't have a pretty port like this, at least not in the same way. The newest port that I could find was GBA versions of each game, and after doing some research, those are the best way to play the game. Now when I tried ordering the games for the GBA version because I heard that was the best version, trying to get them at an affordable price, they weren't gonna get here until weeks later. I ended up actually getting both of them for like 10 bucks, but they're, you know, it's gonna be, I think one of them is still like a month out for me to actually get it. So then I thought, I don't really want to wait that long. I want to get started. I don't really have this game yet, Final Fantasy 1. So what I could just do is start off with the worst versions, which would be the version for the phone and the version for Steam. Now, before I get a bunch of crap, at the end of the day, I really want to play these games for one, to know the story, to see some of the mechanics of it, and figure out what makes each Final Fantasy game unique. So I started playing Final Fantasy 5 on the phone and Final Fantasy 6 on Steam. So I already beat Final Fantasy 5, and we will get more into that into my review, which should be my next video. And I will talk more in depth about it in that video, but that is how I decided to start. I'm playing 5 and 6 first, and then from there, I'm gonna play 1 and 2 on the PSP. Final Fantasy 3, I actually have the best version for it, which is on the Nintendo DS. Then Final Fantasy 4, I have 2 options. I can either play again, I think it's like the DS version that comes with, like the models are different. They're not little sprites, but they're like actually like 3D-ish models, kind of like Final Fantasy 3 is. Or I can play the complete collection, which is on PSP, and again, those aren't like 3D models, it's like sprites and stuff, and again like 32-bit. Haven't decided which one I'm gonna play yet because I've heard they're both great. I've heard some positives and some negatives from each one. And then Final Fantasy 5 and 6 I would have already played, and then we'll just go in order from there. So I should play 7, and Final Fantasy 8, Final Fantasy 9, Final Fantasy 10, and all of these I'll be playing the remastered version, probably on console, on a PS4 or Xbox. Now another cool thing, as I beat each Final Fantasy game, after doing my review, I'm also going to be playing the very first Dissidia that came out on the PSP. I don't have it in the physical version. It hasn't come in on Amazon yet. I do actually have it downloaded on my PSP because I have the same account that I had when I had that one PSP Go, the original PSP that I had played Dissidia on. So as I beat each game, I have started Dissidia. I'm playing through that main character's story in Dissidia. Now, like I said, I already beat 5, so I started doing that, and I played through Bart's story on Dissidia. And while I'm not getting the exact experience that I wanted, because there are characters from different Final Fantasies popping up in his story, for the most part, I am getting the cool experience of just focusing on him and no one else. This is also super cool because I don't know, there's something about it as a gamer. You know, I already got him all the way, like, after beating his story, like, 100%. So I'm very excited for that. So I'm going to be doing my unboxings. I'm going to be playing Dissidia, and I'm going to be doing a review on every single game that I play. I will probably play Crisis Core when do I want to play it? I will probably play this after I beat 10. Final Fantasy Tactics, I'm not sure when I'll play that. Also probably after I beat 10. Or I'll try and throw it in there in between one of the games if I feel like I want something new. And then we get into phase 2, where I play Final Fantasy 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So that is my plan. That is the goal with all of these things that I'm doing with this Final Fantasy journey. We're gonna see how it goes. Let me know what you all think of me creating this ultimate Final Fantasy experience. Is it good? Is it bad? Do you want to try it out yourself? Now, a lot of the handheld games I'm probably gonna be just playing on my own, but especially when I get to all the console games, I'm gonna be streaming those. Make sure to join the Discord that's down in the description, and follow me on Twitch so we can talk live. So anywho, that is it for creating the ultimate experience for Final Fantasy. The way that I think playing all these games will be super enjoyable. And yeah, thank you all so much for watching. Let me know what you think of this idea. Leave a like, leave a comment, leave a follow, join the Wolfpack, and I will see you all next time. Wolfpack.